I took my glasses off because I'm nearsighted and you're too close to me. So
Okay.
not people are probably not used to seeing me without glasses.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the day, you'll see me with glasses or a hat or glasses. I got like
Yeah.
a glasses hat combo. All right. We are joined this hour by Josie Mendez, Dr. Josie Mendez Negrete. We're very excited. She is an author, professor, just an incredible worker in the community, cultural worker. We're really excited. This is again one of the Dawes Center for the Arts signature speaker series. The Dawes Center for the Arts is a not-for-profit in Pomona, California. We're an art lab as well as an art gallery, and we seek to serve Pomona and the surrounding areas. And now that the whole world's on the internet, we're serving the world. So we're really excited and honored to have that responsibility. But Josie, let us, Dr. Nicholas, let us
Call
begin.
me Josie, please.
Josie, okay, yeah. I was like, I should have cleared that first. Josie, please begin at the beginning. Tell us your road to be where you are today. Tell us how you got started in academia and your educational path.
I will tell you that as a young child, I knew I wanted to be a professor, but being from a working class, peasant background, I had no idea what it was that I was speaking about. I didn't want to be a maestra or a teacher like the ones I had. I wanted to work at a university, but it was just in my imagination. So I got a circuitous journey to get to that point. Prior to, I'm a migrant, a migrant who came here to the United States with my mother and father without documents. My mother and my father brought my younger sister and myself. The rest were born here or were immigrated. We were not immigrated. We were brought here without documents because at that particular time, they were asking for a $1,500 bond per child. And there's no way that they had that kind of money to bring us. So they just brought us. I am privileged and fortunate enough that it was at a time when I never got persecuted. The migra wasn't after me. I was never afraid they're going to come around the corner and take me. I knew they weren't going to take my parents because they were here legally. So a lot of the contradictions going on now were going on. And so why am I telling you that I'm a migrant? Because we moved around a lot for a variety of reasons. And so I didn't have the best of educations. Initially in Mexico, I did. I had a parochial education because my mother believed that education was important. But when I came here, it was public education all the way beginning from the 6th grade and wherever I could get it. So I didn't get an elite education. I didn't get taught to think that the professoriate would be a path I would take. When I talked to my counselor about taking college ed courses, she basically chased me out of her office and says, "Oh, young girl, you're bilingual. The best you can do is to be a secretary, take business classes. I don't think you can take college education courses." And of course, I'm paraphrasing, and I don't think she said it that clearly, but she basically said, "No, college is not for your type." And so my type insisted, and with a little trick I had up my sleeve, my mother authorized me to sign all of our permissions and all our slips with her name. She gave me permission to sign her name. So I signed my name to a note where my mother asked that they give me college education courses, and they did. They gave me, the course content. And so from there, I'm talking about the late 60s. Okay. Now, this is after the Educational Opportunity Act, when people are having an opportunity after, those who came back from both wars, the World War II and Korea, who were able to come in the GI Bill. We had Chicanos going to college, but very few Chicanas in that way at the time. So when EOP came out, the same pattern continued. They recruited, my homeboys, guys in the neighborhood who didn't go to Vietnam, and so I didn't get recruited to go to the university or to go to college. And keep in mind, all this time I'm going to school without documents, even though I have permission to stay here. okay? Because they gave us an A1 card and the right to stay in the nation, but we could move out. We couldn't go to Mexico. We couldn't travel outside of the country. We were legally here, but didn't have a permanent residency. And so I went to the community college and took business classes because I thought, okay, Miss Hiljay was right. I can be an amazing bilingual secretary, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a bilingual secretary. So I did that. I went my first semester at West Valley College in Campbell near San Jose. You know, basically, I have a long life. You ask the question, so you bear with it, okay? I'm a mujer de la tercera edad, okay?
No, it's fascinating
You know,
stuff. I mean,
or a viejita, as they say, or as I say myself. So what happened is that, you know, it was really boring stuff. It was bookkeeping. It was something that I wasn't interested in. So I decided to drop out. And I dropped out. I got a couple credits, and the other stuff, they withdrew me because I did it before I got Fs. So my community college record wasn't that great, but it didn't look as horrible as I thought it would after I did that. And so what happened, all by this time, I was, you know, working in the community, you know, participating in the movimiento that was there, very active, amazing community. And so I decided that I was going to go ahead and try to work in the community. And after doing like a refresher course for secretarial preparation at the Center for Employment Training, which used to be called OIC, Opportunities Industrialization Center, which was a vocational training program that came out of Philadelphia with Reverend Sullivan, who started it to get people jobs in the barrios and in the neighborhoods. Well, in 5 weeks, I had a job with a community services organization, and I was in heaven. Not only was that the place where Cesar Chavez got his start organizing in Salsipuedes in San Jose, that was also the place that was beginning to help people get their documents so they would have legal documentation in the area. So I worked with Mr. Gonzalez, who was a person that did the paperwork, and then Sid Otto was a director of the agency, and an amazing guy from Mexico who came via Texas by the name of geez, don't tell me I forgot. Anyways, he was an amazing guy who, Lino Covarrubias, who was a jokester and who did a lot of work in the community. So what happened is that I began organizing with the viejitos, going to trips to Reno, Lake Tahoe, you know, helping with the paperwork, translating, going to meetings, raising funds. And it was there that I did a little shortcut because it's so long, I cut it here. But before I worked there, you know, as a younger girl, I got hired by the telephone company, which used to be Ma Bell. So I was a long distance operator. And then it was after that I worked at CSO. There's other places, but I'm kind of abridging it, okay? So what happened at CSO then is that the community studies program at the University of California at Santa Cruz was teaching community organizers and social planners, which is kind of like the position I have. Even though I was the secretary, I was doing community organizing as well. So what they did is they came in and they taught 2 courses, and that just lit my fire. And I thought, oh my, I got 2 A's, okay? I mean, strong, not tokenistic A's, but 2 A's that I worked really hard for and that I loved, you know, taking. By this time, I'm a single parent, you know, with children, living in this environment. And so what I did is I decided that I was going to go back to school. Now, all the while, I'm active. I'm active with the UFW. I'm active with Community Services Organization. I'm active with Confederación de la Raza Unida, and just a variety of community organizations that were providing services to San Jose, and East San Jose in particular. That's where I lived most of the time that I lived there. So then what happened is that I went back to school. Now this is now the beginning of the 70s. I went back to school and I went to San Jose City College and I went to Chicano Studies. Guess what happened? The fire lit. And so it's like I wrote poetry, I wrote short stories, people began to tell me that I could write. I was the editor of La Voz newspaper for San Jose City College, you know, and I was the president for part of the Somos Raza Mecha. We were not just Mecha, we were Somos Raza, because we believe that we were third world people and that we couldn't exclude anybody who wasn't Chicano, and that we include Mexicanos and other Latinos if they wanted to participate. So Alfred Arteaga was one of my professors. Rudy Cordova was another one of my professors, and some really amazing persons. There was a professor in the sciences, but I didn't have any females who were my professors. The one that was my mentor was actually a counselor by the name of Maria Garcia at that time, who became my mentor. So I finished my education at City and I thought, okay, I continue working full-time, by the way, because I had to support myself. I wasn't eligible for any financial aid. And so within 2 to 3 years, I've got all the credits for two degrees, you know, human services and psychology. And so I decided that I was going to continue getting my education. And so I went to San Jose State University, and individuals who knew me and who knew the kind of work I did in the community brought to my attention a program that San Jose State University had on when they started Mexican American Graduate Studies program, which, by the way, was the first Chicano Studies program in the nation. Not San Fernando, not Northridge, that teaching graduate students. And so they also started a school of social work. And I thought, well, I want to help my people. You know, what else can I do? Well, I'll go to work. So I went and applied, and I found out that with credit for life experience and the credentials I had from City College, that I was accepted into a master program with a condition that if I passed the first year with better than a B, that I could stay on as a second year person and I would get my BA degree along with my master's degree. Guess what? I got my MSW. So with my W, or Master's in Social Work, I was able to, you know, continue working in my community. I did an internship with a Confederación de la Raza Unida, and you know, to do community organizing. And then I also did an internship with a Center for Employment Training in the planning department. And so I got my MSW and I continue working in private nonprofit organizations, including, you know, like the Hmong community was coming into the area because San Jose has taken in a lot of people who, you know, like the Chilenos were really a strong vibe there for a particular time, you know. And so I went and worked for that program. I worked for, you know, for children, center that a friend of mine, you know, asked me to substitute for a year because she was going to go back to school, and I agreed that I would do that. And so by this time, I end up moving to Santa Cruz, California, because my husband went to get his PhD in organic chemistry. And of course, all of us moved from San Jose, and we ended up going to Santa Cruz because that's where he got his PhD. And I went to work in San Jose. I commuted for a year. And then after that year, I got a job as a program manager for the Youth Services Organization for Santa Clara County. And I continued to do the work that I did, which is teach, you know, practice for social workers who were preparing to do clinical work or community organizing. So I did that. I've trained about 40 professional social workers in a variety of areas. And then I was also a faculty field liaison. They paid me to supervise agencies, to supervise our our interns. So that was like in 1984, and by that time I decided, I wasn't getting promoted. I applied for a job. They hired a white woman with a high school education because she had 20 years of recovery experience and she knew drugs and addiction. And so here I am with my master's in social work, an excellent community organizing and clinical background. And basically they passed me over. And I just thought, I'm not going to get ahead anywhere here. I'm just going to stay in the middle, sandwiched up as middle management from the top and the bottom. And I want to continue helping my community. I'm going to look into, at that time, I'm going to look into law school, and I'm going to look into, because I could help that way. And then I just decided, nope, that's not the way. I want to be a professor. So I went to talk to some people at UC Santa Cruz, and I came in to the PhD program where I graduated. I was the first one in my class. Now, mind you, I was supposed to not graduate. I wasn't good enough. I didn't know how to be a student. I have all kinds of, bad recollections, but let me tell you, I'm a damn good student. I'm a good teacher and I'm a good student. And so what happened, it took me 6 years, including the completion of my dissertation, to graduate from UC Santa Cruz with a PhD in sociology. I could then look for work and go someplace and teach what I always wanted to do. Now, keep in mind that I was teaching at the State College. I was working as a faculty field liaison, and I was supervising the practical work of students who were getting master's degrees. So I did do teaching, but it was in your traditional entrance into the academy. That's why I tell you it's circuitous and roundabout. So I shortened it, and I talked so fast, I don't know if I covered anything that's important, but.
No, that was quite a history. I'm actually interested and curious. You touched on a lot of different things, Mecha, UFW, a few different things, but one thing I'm really curious about, what was the work of La Raza Unida at that time in San Jose?
Okay, La Raza Unida was a community organization that fought for the health, educational, and political rights of and anti-police violence in San Jose. It was made up as a result of a premier organizer par excellence, who was my professor, Dr. Jose Carrasco. He is nationally renowned for the work that he's done by those of us who know him, but he's a very humble man who doesn't put himself at the center. So he, at that time, was working, I don't know if you've heard this, I'm telling you, there was in San Jose, like there was in San Antonio, there still is in San Antonio, but not this year, they were celebrating the colonial conquest of Raza. And they had a Fiesta de las Rosas parade that used to be done in San Jose. Well, I can tell you that. And that was in 1968. The Raza said, enough. You're not going to be parading us with burros and our peasant clothing, cleaning up the caca, because that's where you find the place for us. We're going to boycott it. And so they boycotted the Fiesta de las Rosas. Some people ended up in jail. By this time, they're thinking of organizing an organization, a master organization made up of all of the organizations that work with and organize Raza. And so that's how Confederación de la Raza came in, kind of modeled after Federación from San Diego. And so it became the advocate, and at the end of my community organizing, the paper tiger, because people didn't see that as a vehicle by which to create change. There was more radical ways of thinking, but it's some amazing, amazing, amazing organizers and people came out as a result of that. You know, there was that consent decree that I told you about that I might have mentioned, that I worked for AT&T, for the phone company. The reason I worked for that is because Confederación de la Raza levied a lawsuit against them because they didn't hire Raza. Well, I got hired and it was their work. And, you know, it's that kind of activity. You know, the rights of people, the East Side Health Clinic in East San Jose, we didn't have any access to health services. It was the work of, you know, Sofia Mendoza as a leader, and the work of other people in the community, including Confederación de la Raza, who, you know, and Ernestina Garcia, among others, who decided, you're not going to do this to our people. And I don't know if you know that in San Jose, our walkouts began a year earlier than Los Angeles, and it was middle school kids who took on the school district, San Jose Unified School District, because they were racist and because they were miseducating our students. I mean, I wasn't like central, but I was around that stuff. Yeah. So it was amazing, amazing work.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this project is about getting the oral history. So even it's not a matter about, like, you know, some people taking credit or that. It's more just like getting that history for those who may not know. Some people, you know, it's been so long since we had any kind of legal victories well, no, I shouldn't say that, but it's been a long time. There's a lot of legal victories in the past that aren't happening now. So I don't think a lot of people are familiar with the phrase consent decree. Can you tell us what that is and what that means?
It's a contract or an agreement between two entities whereby they agree to rectify or correct past practices by bringing in people to a place of employment so they can be in parity with, you know, the number of population, for example, who, you know, who live in that community. And I'm not a lawyer, so if anybody wants to call and define it, that's fine. But that's how we understood it in the community. You know, we also got one of those during the time of the police attacks. There was this dog who, a lot of Blacks and Chicanos being killed, and he got removed with the efforts, and the Confederación was part of it, but with the efforts of the community.
Yeah. So so we've gone through your educational journey. I've asked some people along the way. It just seems like everything we do is that all our positive attributes are turned into a negative. Like, you know, if we work really hard, we're seen as like not smart. If we're bilingual, somehow that makes us not smart. I mean, our intelligence is constantly questioned, no matter what kind of aptitude we show, right? Mm-hmm. So the question I've been asking a lot of people was like, what are some of the times I remember that they were kind of punished for showing this aptitude? When was the first time they were punished for being essentially a smart Mexican?
Well, see, I wasn't punished, but I can tell you that I found out because I was working for the Santa Clara Unified School District, where I got my high school degree. And I was working for the Neighborhood Youth Corps, you know, which was a federal program that hired individuals to make money during the summer so they can help themselves, you know, for their school. So I was filing paperwork and looking at files, and it was student files. And then I ran into one of my friends, and mine wasn't there, but this young woman's file was there, and it had a big red MR, capitalized, super big MR on the file label. And so I thought, what's going on here? What's going on here? So I went and I asked what it stood for. And they kind of didn't answer my question, but really it was at the time that they were calling us mentally retarded. And they perceived us as educable, but not intelligent. Okay, that's why they sent us to the vocational fields. So, you know, Mrs. Hiljay, the counselor, the high school counselor that I told you, who believed that I was only good to become a secretary. And see, what happens is that they're putting down people who provide an invaluable service because they think you're good enough for that, but they don't think you're good enough for somebody else, something else. And so I'll never forget, the idea of what am I, people are always trying to figure out, am I Indian and what tribe I'm in? And they would outright ask me, what are you? As if it didn't matter. So a lot of inappropriate notions of who has the ability and who has the capacity. Now, mind you, all the while I'm doing is I'm trying to show them that not only am I smart, I'm smarter than you. Because I was literate in Spanish, read, write, and speak. You know what I did in high school? I took French with Mrs. Cummings, and I got A's, okay, for 3 straight years. And all I got from my counselor was, that's kind of dumb. You already speak Spanish. Why don't you get us, an easy A? I said, why should I get an easy A when I can get an easy A in French? Never went to see her again. I sought the support of other counselors there. So, that kind of stuff is, here I am trying to learn a third language, and I'm interested in language, and I'm not encouraged. I'm discouraged because I'm already a little Mexican who speaks 2 languages. And even though it's the second language is not valued, I could use it to get myself out of the fields. And I was told that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's.
I'm getting too passionate here.
No.
It's myself jumping out of my seat.
No, it's a very common experience that has reoccurred over and over and over again in the course of these interviews. That where our intelligence is constantly questioned, and no matter what we do, we somehow either cheated to be there, or why are you doing that, or
somebody gave it to you.
Right. Yeah, because they can't cope. They can't deal with the idea because, well, why do you think that? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is that they constantly question our intelligence? Why is it they're constantly saying we must have cheated, or something weird must be happening?
No, it's if you look at the conquest of the Southwest, the conquest of the Southwest took place with what Montejano calls the peace structure, meaning that they incorporated us into the system at the level that they wanted to include us. So what do? They create a second, third tier system where we fit into lower rungs than anybody else. They take all of our social capital, they take all of our knowledge, and then they tell us that it's now cowboy instead of vaqueros. And they tell us that our language is irrelevant and that it's not important. And in order for us to be equal, we have to speak the dominant language. And so it's colonization straight out, from it. How do you conquer people in that kind of situation? You take away their language, you take away their culture, and you tell them they're valueless and they're worthless. And then you keep repeating that story over and over again. Dirty Mexicans, wetbacks, you name it. It's filled with that kind of narrative. And it's right now is one of those times when it's the worst with this president, that doesn't have our interest in mind and that would like to send us back to Mexico any which way he can. And he's doing it.
It seems like we experience it as individuals, but it's part of a bigger, broader world.
It's a collective. And so what happens is that, we as a people buy the story lock, stock, and barrel. And in order for us to be, so that they perceive us as equal, we give up who we are so we can become in the image of the conqueror. And so we become Hispanics instead of Mexican descent or Mexican heritage, which is kind of safe. Or Chicana. I'm a Chicana. And I'm a Chicana with a che because I went to, I got my politicization at a time where I could calm myself, even though some of my friends didn't think I was Chicana because I didn't meet the pedigree. I was born in Mexico and raised here. And they ain't no Chicanas who were born in Mexico. Well, like this one was. It's like Chavela Vargas said, Mexicanos nacen donde les da la chingada gana. Well, Chicanos se hacen the same way.
I love it. I love it. So, man, what are you with there? So that's what you experienced. That's what happened to you. But now you're a professor. Now you're in a position to teach. What is it that you try to get across to your students? What is it that you want to do?
There's a big gap there, okay? Because you also have to remember, and you probably haven't read the book, so I have to tell you. My first book is Las Hijas de Juan, Daughters Betrayed. And what that book documents is the sexualization as a tool of authority and power against girls and women, used by my father to abuse the family, okay? So I grew up in a very controlling, disciplined environment where I was to see myself as inferior to men and as not having value and worth, and to see myself as someone who would only be good enough to marry and have kids for somebody else. But that was all I could aspire. I couldn't be anything else. And so all along, what I have here is some contesting and subverting and challenging structures of inequality and systems of oppression, not just in the schools with race, with class, and with gender, but also as at home, as an environment that's misogynist and poisonous as a patriarchal structure. So all of that is I see myself like the little train going uphill. All those were messages of you can't. And I'm saying, yes, I can. I'll show you, I'll do it. And I will. And so instead of becoming defeated as someone who believed the lies about my people, the lies about myself as a woman, the privilege or the corruption of power, taken by a person that had no right, so all the while, so when I went to look into the PhD program, I really wanted to look at incest as a problem. And it's not just a Mexican problem, by the way, it's a universal problem. That's a pandemic, okay? But that we never talk about because that's a secret. That's a taboo. That's what we kept silent. And so when I talked to the men primarily who were running the department, they said, oh no, that's not a sexy subject. I think you should think about something else. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll look at the Cristero Revolution because it happened in my community where I was growing up as a little girl, and I was really interested by those stories. And so then I just decided, no, that's not what I want, because I'm going to have to study with this guy who's a third worldist and he doesn't like Mexicans, and I'm not going to struggle with that. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to do leadership, activism and leadership. And so that was what I did my research project on, okay? And it focuses on San Jose.
Yeah. So I want to talk about your books, but first I want to talk about well, I wanted to leave your books to the end, so I was going to get back to your books. It was like kind of a method to end with the book, so you think. But yeah, we got into it now. So what did you find? I mean, I want to ask you this because it kind of stems from the conversation. You had the expectations of society that were telling you one thing, and then you had the expectations of a household more near telling you that you can only be this, and this one's telling you can only be that. Which one was more difficult to overcome? Which one presented itself? I know they're simultaneous, but which one was the more harder struggle?
That's not a question that makes sense to me, because I'm, as an interpretive, as a sociologist, I'm doing this, I'm trying to understand myself in the context of my relationships to the world. And so, race, class, gender, and racialized ethnicity were structures of inequality that were really clear to me. Okay. And so I took things on, because it was unfair, because it was unequal, it shouldn't happen. For example, when I was at City College and I was the presidenta of Somos Raza Mecha, we took on City College and the school district because they split up Chicano studies, and they were going to take Chicano studies to Evergreen, the Evergreen area. And we felt that was unfair. And they're going to leave the inner city without, a Chicano studies. So we took them on. We took the board, we took the president, Ted Murgia at that time, who was an amazing human being, but we had to take him on. And so I've always been a person who speaks truth to power. If you read my book, one of the stories is the day I dared my father to drink a fifth of vodka with me. And we went mano a mano because his excuse was he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know why he beat us. He didn't know that he beat my mother to the point of bleeding. He didn't know that he was abusive. Because he was drunk, he didn't know what he was doing. And so I said, okay, let's do this little thing. He was already drunk when he got there. And so I think he got a kick out of me. I'm the firstborn, strong, cabrona child that he had. And thought, okay, well, this one doesn't drink, and what's going to happen? I beat him. He was, he fell under the table, and with every shot that he took and I took, I was describing the environment for him. Ahí está su hija y le tiene miedo. There's my mother. She thinks you're going to beat her up when this, they're not happy that I'm doing this with you. And so I was like the narrator, playing that role. And I don't write that story because I think that was a chingon thing to do. I write that story because it's about power. The power of conviction and taking people on who have power over you. And I thought for sure he was going to beat me to death, but he did nothing. I think he got a kick out of me in some perverted way. I know that's not what you were looking for.
No. I mean, the truth is the truth. The story, I mean, it is what it's your story. Yeah. Well, though I was gonna ask you though, like, you have all these simultaneous things happen. They're all happening all at once, and there's all these the weight of the world coming down on the community as a whole, coming down on the women of the community, simultaneously, all these things happening. But you as a professor, I was kind of curious. That was kind of the question I was going to ask. You as a professor, you as somebody who people look up to, young students looking up to, what is it you try to like imbue in them, tell them, or get across to them that's different from the educational path and the mentorship and the myriad of abuse that they're used to?
The first thing that I try to convey is that they have knowledge, that they don't come in as empty slates, that they come in with knowledge that has its own value and that has its own merit, that has its own worth. And that how they learn to get to this point in life has taught them skills that somebody who went to school to be a preppy doesn't have. Okay, they know how to survive. They know how to deal with the contradictions of life. They know how to challenge adversity. And so what I do to do that is I have them go back and reclaim their family and community history by going back and trying to understand their origins, who they are, where they come from, where the connection with immigration is, how their family got here. And then I try to structure activities and assignments that allow them to write about what socioeconomic class, what gender means, what ethnicity means, what it means to recognize your culture, what it means to be bilingual, what it means to carry the name you have and how it connects you to the legacy of your family. And then from there, they take ownership of feeling valued and feeling like they have a right to be where they're at, and nobody's letting them in. They came in despite, all of the barriers set up for them not to be part of it. And so for me, I think the thing I do best is I have them look at themselves, reclaim their history, and many of them don't even know the first names of their grandparents. Many of them didn't even know that maybe their mother and their father swam the river, with a coyote. And so they also unearth stories that are very painful that they can write to me about, and I can give feedback if they want to, and that they're instructed or encouraged to only tell it if it feels comfortable to them, if they're okay with sharing it with the world. If not, keep it until they feel that it's the time. So, that process of knowledge creation is the understanding that we contend not just with oppression, but also with domination. That and sometimes we may be dominant because we are documented and citizens, and we oppress people who don't because they don't have papers. And so I began to expose those stories. So why are you calling somebody a wetback when your grandma or your father got here in that way and he almost died crossing the river? You see that? So that a lot of reflection. Like, for example, one of the guided questions in the survey is, when were you first aware of the meaning of gender? When were you first, how was it that you first learned that you were a girl or a boy? Because I don't just teach girls, right? And what did that mean for you? And so then I do the same with race, class, gender, and sexuality. And we talk about them, and we problematize them, and we looked at in the context of the structures that are set up to give some people power over others. And we unpack power at the personal, social, cultural, and economic level. That's why they have to report their socioeconomic location, and the communities they live in. So I love doing that. I retired August 31st, 2019. And I really miss the students and not being there. So that process of teaching, I call conocimiento. And conocimiento is the process of knowing self through others. You bring knowledge, but you also gain knowledge from other people, okay, that you relate to, interact with, or that have taught you.
Yeah. Wow, this has been really it's been really informative, really great talk. So what are some of the projects you have on the horizon?
My next book, which is going to be premiering, if we can do anything, in San Jose in October. It's called Activist Leaders of San Jose, California. And basically, it's looking at 24 people who participated, who contributed their oral histories. And I used a similar approach in that I went back and I got their history from their family of origin, their family of procreation, their community history, their activism, their education, and how they perceive themselves and the meaning of activism and leadership for themselves. I'm really, really excited because I don't think a book in that approach, I don't think has been written. Yeah. My two books that I wrote previously are autoethnographies, and because I'm part of it, but I'm not just telling my story. I'm telling my story and the stories of other people's lives that I witnessed as I'm writing about it.
Yeah. Earlier, I got a chance to talk to Norma Cantu, and she said that what she was writing were creative autoethnographies. But What is your definition of an autoethnography?
Okay, for me, an autoethnography is the idea that you are writing about other people in the context of your own self, and you're writing about yourself to witness the life of other people. Some individuals call my hijas de Juana testimonio, because it has that resolution, things were okay, we survived. Juan went to prison and he was out of our life, right? That kind of stuff. But I think autoethnography is telling your story and telling the story of others as they're living it with you through your lenses. Unless you interview them and ask them if this is what they saw, you're not going to be doing an anthropological study. Okay, and even though one of my sisters, my favorite sister, everybody knows that, she would talk to me at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week if I needed to, because I wanted to validate the memories I had. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't something I was making up, or if something was missing, I wanted to ask, is there something else that happened here? And she has an amazing memory. If elephants remember, like my sister remembers, they're geniuses. Okay. And so that's really what it means. And in sociology, it also means that you're not just telling your story and the story of others, but that you can use variant genres to do the story. So you can use creative stuff, you can do storytelling, you can do poetry, you can use music. And my hijas de Juan do that, like the music of my childhood. And I tell stories about what it was growing up in Tabasco, Zacatecas, where I come from, where I was born.
Yeah. For this next book, you interviewed 24 people that are organizers, activists in San Jose. How did you select those 24 different individuals?
What's really interesting is that I designed what I call the reputational sampling technique. And this is a funny story.
Okay.
Because I thought, I grew up in the area. I know a lot of the activists and the leaders of that community. And so but I also wanted to make sure that it had some way of affirming that I just didn't pick my best friends, right? So I did a search with a newspaper search on the contributions, and I interviewed 20 people. I did a pre-field interview. That's what it's called. And the reason it's called reputational sampling is because, given the people and their expertise, I wanted them to each contribute the names of 5 men and 5 women in the community who met their definition of activist leader in the area. And so I collected 127 names. And then what I did from that group of people, I picked it was 25. The 25 who had the most ranking from the number of people who contributed their name. And so I approached the 25, and one, despite the advocacy of his father, did not want to participate. The 24 who participated in my study, I lost one who decided not to be in the book at the last minute. So I completed the study with 24 people. The study is written with 23 people.
I was gonna say, like, you could like read one each hour, but.
Oh, by the way, the funny part,
Yeah.
there's a very famous sociologist by the name of Bill Domhoff. Apparently, right about the time that I was doing my strategy, he wrote a book where he didn't call it reputational sampling, but he did a similar approach to interviewing the elite, because he studies the elite.
Okay.
And so I had to source him or cite him, for my dissertation, because he was the expert.
Yeah, oh man. Yeah. That's how they get you.
Well, that's playing the game. Okay, I'll do a note.
Oh, so I really appreciate you joining us for this hour, Josie. It's been really incredible talking to you. What I kind of want to we'll drop the links below to where we can find your previous work, but also I want to ask you, what advice do you have to people who feel as though writing is not for them, or academia is not for them, or just the whole world's not for them? Like what
Well,
share?
first of all, if you love to write, write. No one is a perfect writer. When we speak, we can't go back and correct ourselves and edit and prove what we say, because that is a spoken way of communicating with people. And writing doesn't come out perfectly the first time you write. I'll never forget in San Jose, California, when the MacArturos came to do a community meeting with Sandra Cisneros as the lead. She talked to a group of school students in a school, and they asked her about her story 11, which is in Woman Hollering Creek, and how long did it take her to write that story. It's a short story, and she said it took me 20 rewrites. And people went, oh! And they thought Sandra Cisneros is going to just write the story, right? And what her message was, you just have to keep doing it until all the pieces, all the right stories, all the words meld into what you want to convey. And it's clear to you, but it's even more clear to the people who read it. When I was in community college at San Jose City, Mr. Washington was the English professor for my English 1B. And I took African American studies again, because I wanted to know something I didn't know. I got an A+ in his class, and he was my mentor for the newspaper of La Voz at City College. And he told me I was a good writer. And then when I took another class that required a lot of writing, they told me I was a good writer, but they were evaluating me for the community college. They were never evaluating me for somebody who's going to go to get a PhD and who has to have a particular way of conveying her messages. So, because there's formulas for everything. And so I know you're going to talk about my books. With Las Hijas de Juan, it was my first book. And it's a book that I was told by every academic that wanted to mentor me, including Latinas, that I should stop writing that book and I should write articles so that I could get my publications, to be able to make tenure. And my response was, I didn't come here to get tenure. I came here to make contributions, to work with students, and to write what I need to write. And Las Hijas de Juan was the book that kept coming out of me, that I was true to. And actually, that's what gave me my promotion to associate professor. Because in Chicano studies, you can use literary and creative works to do that. And you can also be, you can challenge the norms and the structures, to write something that is not a given. My book was the first book that where somebody wrote about incest in the context of a Chicana's experience. I know that it's helped a lot of people, and I know that it's still being purchased. And so I'm really happy about that. The University Press is making a lot of money. I'm not making very much because it's, you know how that works. Okay, so, but anyways, this is Las Hijas de Juan, Daughters Betrayed. Okay, published by Duke University Press. But look at the cover. It's behind
I see it's right behind you. Yeah.
That is by Pilar Agüero, who's from San Jose. And the initial publication was published by Chusma House, and it's an independent press. But then this is what, Duke University Press had never published, a book that had been published. They never republished. So that was my first. The next one is A Life on Hold. That one was published by the University of New Mexico. And that is my art. I did the cover. And it's my son's story, my oldest boy. Then I have a little independent press called Conocimientos Press. This was the first publication from it, and it won the International Book Award on Women's Issues for the last issue. And then this is La Voz del Mariachi, a curriculum guide. No, The Art of Mariachi, a curriculum guide. And that's the second one. And I have 3 other books in the works. So answering you kind of in a backward way. So why do I think that everybody can write? I think all of us carry books inside us. And I think somebody just has to believe in us and tell us that we can write our book and that we can work with people to publish. And so I thought that it would be an important thing for me to create Conocimientos Press LLC, so that people who get rejected by traditional presses and academic presses in particular have an option. When somebody who's gone through the publication process, I was the lead editor of Chicana Latina Studies, an academic journal, for 5 years. I'm not a perfect writer, but I'm smart, and I think I learn my lessons quickly. And I think I impart the lessons I learned so other people may also have them if they want to share them. So I love what I do. And I'm really, really enjoying this other part, and I'm continuing to work on it. And that's one of the reasons I have the Zoom now, because my husband's me, hey, you got to communicate with people in whatever way you can. Get that Zoom in there. So there's a Zoom. You
Zoom
got it. Yeah.
Yeah, we had some technical difficulties, but we made it happen.
Yep.
Will is away. All right. Well, Josie, I really, really appreciate you joining for this hour. It's been informative. It's been inspirational. We already dropped some of the links below to find your work. So I really, really, again, I really appreciate this time we spent together.
Don't forget that I think the world of you, and I love your work. And continue doing what you're doing. You don't need a PhD to do it. But if you ever want one and you're interested in pursuing one, it's your right. And you're not doing it to prove anything to anyone, because you're already a published author. You're doing it because you want another way of knowing to give you access to worlds that would not give you access otherwise.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hugs. A real hug, because I don't do virtual. All right. Thank you very much, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Josie.
I'll see you soon. Maybe at a next meeting or something.
Maybe, or maybe on another Zoom.
Yeah, there you go. Good talking to you.